Greetings, seekers and life travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod, and I am your Life Mastery coach. And as you probably already know, and I'm sure you'll resonate with this as I tell you this, everyone wants to be heard. Just feel that for a second. But how often do we actually just listen to ourselves? If we could develop a practice of quieting the inner chatter so that we could just hear the soft voice of our inner authority, we really could come quickly to know ourselves more intimately, and as a result, this could transform our lives. So that's going to be the topic of today's discussion. And my guest today is someone you've seen before on Life Mastery TV, someone that I really cherish and value in my life. She's a good friend and a colleague, and her name is Sara Jane. Sara is the voice of, or the master of voice, creator of vocal Reiki, founder and main host of Gift of Healing TV, and also an international speaker and author. She's a master teacher and practitioner of Reiki and vocal Reiki, and she draws on her own life experiences and healing journey to support others with understanding and empathy. Welcome, Sara. Thank you so much for joining me again on Life Mastery TV. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, well, you and I have done this sort of thing many, many times, and it's always kind of a magical experience, at least in my opinion. And I think other people who watch these, the shows and the recordings also have that experience as well. So we're going to be talking about this idea of hear yourself, discover yourself. And I understand you have a little bit of a backstory here that helps us to understand why this is such an important topic to you. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I'd love to. It was earlier this year, and I'd connected with somebody via one of the social media, and they'd said, "Oh, I'd like to give you one of the sessions of the work that I do." And they'd sent me a questionnaire saying, what questions you've got to ask, what would you like to look at, what areas in your life, etc. Well, when somebody says to me, what do you want? I want nothing, because I wants don't get. That's another aspect altogether. But we had conversation around this. So we were video conversation because this particular person's in the States. And they would... I don't think they realized what they were doing, but they seemed to be absolutely not listening to me at all. Because the thing I was asking was this thing about the wanting, that how I get round this way I'd been brought up of I want, don't get. And it's just like, and I hear that word want, and it's just like, no, don't want anything, because I won't get it anyway. But this person...
So hang on, before you continue, I just want to get clear that so I understand. You say you have learned a lesson that says, if I want something, I don't get it. Is that what you're saying? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Please continue.
That's all right. But, when we were talking, and it's, all right, well, we'll do this, we'll do that. And he'd gone off at a total tangent away from what I was asking, because I was only really asking the one thing, and I hadn't got loads and loads of questions. He said, you can have up to 20 questions. It's just like, no, I don't need 20 questions. I haven't got that about me, about my life. It was the I want thing. And so at the end of this particular conversation, I wasn't feeling good at all. I was feeling quite horrible. I really was feeling quite horrible. And it was the following morning, and I suddenly realized I didn't feel listened to. I really didn't feel listened to. And then I realized about all my past, my backstory, all the things from childhood when I've been crying for my parents in the hospital. Nobody was listening to me. And it was just like, whoa. And so then I started listening to myself. It was just like, okay, I really have, because I work with the inner child, that is the aspect that I work with people. And I do this work on myself. Whenever anything crops up, I absolutely go in to listen to my inner child and to spend time with my inner child, because the healing of the inner child to me is so important, and has freed me in unbelievable ways. And it was about that listening. And when we connected again, this gentleman and myself, when we connected again for the session that we were meant to be having, he said, I'm come up with something totally different. We are going to interview the dragons through you. Well, that's fine. But I actually started that whole thing with him by saying, thank you so very much. And then explained why I was saying thank you, and that it wasn't a sarcastic thank you for not listening to me. Because he did what he did, he helped me to actually understand that that was something that was very big still within me, an area of my life that needed to be, I don't like the word need, but an area of my life that was to be healed. And it was the right time to do it. Mm-hmm. That listening to yourself and hearing yourself, but also listening to other people and hearing what's the saying there is about there, that we listen to answer rather than listen to understand.
Right.
And I try very hard to listen to understand, right, rather than listen to answer.
Wow. So that's quite so if I understand this correctly, what happened was you kind of got triggered into an old wound by virtue of the way this person was showing up and dealing with you. And it led you into some introspection that helped you to understand that you needed to listen to yourself more carefully, because otherwise you may not get heard at all. Is that kind of accurate?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't listen to yourself, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
Because, okay, one of the biggest things for me, one of the biggest enlightenments to me about my own journey and my own healing was that understanding that when I changed my name from Jane to Sarah, and Sarah Jane is how I was christened, just no hyphen. So I changed it within my name. But when I changed it from Jane to Sarah, the only person in my life who ever rejected me was me. And it is about listening to yourself and hearing yourself. So when that came up, it was just like, wow. And I listened to it and I heard it. It was the same with this trigger. I listened. And then I allowed the understanding come in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And there's something else that I notice here that, I'm just going to offer you a little bit of feedback, and I don't know, maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. But I noticed that a big part of your work and what's in your bio is this vocal Reiki, this idea of master of voice, the idea that you're trying to help people find their voice. Well, guess what? When you find your voice, then people can hear you and you can be listened to. I find that such an amazing connection. You've got you're helping people to be heard by helping them find their voice. I think that's beautiful.
And the other aspect of that is with the interviewing, with Gift of Healing TV, it is important to listen to my guest.
Of course.
So that we can take the interview, the next step.
Right.
It is important with clients, when I'm working one-on-one with clients with the vocal Reiki, because it isn't just about the toning the sound, it is about listening to their experience of that toning,
Right.
energies, the feelings, the memories that it brings up. It is about listening to that and understanding as best I can what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it then helps them to find their voice, to connect with their younger self, but actually most of the time the voice isn't needed with younger self. It's just a great big hug that is required for the younger self. But it is. And when we can do that, we can start having confidence. But it's also that confidence in when we find our voice, just trusting that the people that need I wish I could think of a better word. The people that need to hear what we've got to say will hear.
Mm-hmm.
The people that don't at that point in time will find us as and when it is right for them to find us. But if we
Sure.
don't use our voice in the first place, how is anybody going to hear us?
That's a great question. And I mean, the whole thing about listening is very, very important unto itself. I absolutely agree with you there. But this topic that we've chosen is all about hear yourself, discover yourself. So my question for you is, how do you describe for people the process of listening to yourself?
I think that is very different for everybody. It really is. I suppose I'm very lucky because I very much work with intuition, gut instinct. And maybe that is where we should all be. It is if something makes you feel something. And isn't there a saying out there about along the lines of if something rubs you up the wrong way, I know it's not these words at all, but if something rubs you up the wrong way, what is it trying to tell you about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did I feel horrible at the end of that particular meeting, for want of a better word. I really did. And then it was actually opening up because my body was actually saying, right, now you can hear me.
Interesting.
So listening is hearing. It is about being heard. I suppose
Mm-hmm.
they're, in some respects, they are very connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, I think it's not possible to hear something without listening, or at least becoming aware on some level. You know, I think that awareness is really what we're talking about here. That inner voice, that quiet inner voice, the voice of my higher self, the voice of my soul, the voice of my inner authority that I like to call it my inner authority. That voice doesn't ever yell. It's a very quiet, loving, compassionate, and forgiving voice that is constantly speaking to you from inside, or maybe it's on the outside and we just perceive it as on the inside. I don't know. But anyway, it feels like it's coming from the inside. At least that's my experience. And when I quiet my chatter mind to the point where I can just be present to that, then I can hear it. And the things that it tells me are really quite beautiful and quite supportive and nurturing and loving things. And sometimes that voice has some information for me that lets me know that maybe I'm not exactly on the right path right now. And one of the things that I can do in that case is start finding out by asking questions. Well, then what is the right path for me? How do I find the right path for me? And so forth. All of these answers, all of these questions that we have can be answered by that inner authority if we would only take time to listen.
And take time to go in. It is so important to go inwards because the answers are all there in the pure, amazing being that we all are. And to me, it was about the feeling. And when I work with people, it's how did that feel? What came up for you? And it was with myself, it's okay. It's all right, okay, that was the feeling I was feeling. So what was that all about? And I suppose with all the work that I've done, when I get a sense of something, whatever it may be, it's just like, okay, right, listen, hear, and do your best to try and understand. And we do get these things occasionally when it is the right time. And it is about allowing ourselves to listen, allowing ourselves to hear, and allowing ourselves to stop. And I would say sort of listen to your heart, because I feel your heart, your higher self, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, it's your guide. To me, our heart is our connection to our soul, our spirit, which is how we receive. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people's feeling is about that, how it comes to them. It's right for you, whatever you want to call it. But it is about listening to it, hearing it, and allowing and understanding and being able to connect with that aspect of yourself. I really do feel we can heal that, in a lot of cases, traumatized aspect of ourselves by listening and hearing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that, I've noticed people when they're in conversation, very often people who think they're listening are actually forming their own opinion while they're hearing the thing going on, and they're just waiting for their chance to come back into the conversation with some opposing point of view. It doesn't feel very much like a collaborative effort, that kind of communication. It feels like a competitive effort. And in fact, I think that most communication on this planet is competitive communication. And so the idea that I think what you're talking about is to be able to listen to understand, which means I have to put aside my own agenda. When I'm listening to you, I have to put aside my own agenda, and I have to take the time to simply hear what you're saying and understand it. And if there's anything about it that's not clear to me, then I can pause. I say, all right, something you just said didn't quite make sense to me. Can you help me understand more about what you're saying? Now I am actually seeking to understand. Now I'm in a process of, I'm not competing with you anymore. I'm trying to help us both deepen the conversation so that we can both hear deeply what it is you're trying to say. That is the nature of listening in my mind.
I was listening to everything you were saying and trying not to go into. One of the things I've said for so many years now is, if somebody says something you don't like, rather than saying, did you mean what you said? Say, did you mean what I heard?
Oh, yeah.
Because it isn't necessarily, you ask them, did you mean what you said? You're going to get the answer, yes. Because why would they have said it?
Right.
But because of the different place we are all in, the different experiences we've had, the fact that one of us may have got up in a bad mood and the other one got up really happy and whatever, because of the energies around each of us, of what's going on in our own life, you can speak to a room of 1,000 people. You're saying exactly the same to all of them, and every one of them is going to hear something slightly different. So many arguments and disagreements could be prevented by that simple, asking of a question, but the wording of that question being, did you mean what I heard? But totally rephrasing what it was they said.
Yeah.
But also listen to everything else around what they've said. Because that could also help you to think, oh, maybe I misinterpreted that. But we get very good when we hear something we don't like of shutting everything else out and not listening to any more to understand.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Of course it does. I totally agree with you. And my approach when I'm listening to somebody is I don't ask, did you mean what I heard? I have a slightly different way of doing that. What I'll do is I'll say, so what I heard was, and then I will feed back what I've heard. And then you could listen to what I'm saying as my feedback, and you say, well, that's not quite what I meant. Now, you see, this way I'm not making you wrong for saying something. Great, help me understand more about what you said. So this is a beautiful exchange. Now this, however, is between two people who are communicating with one another. Remember, our objective here was to talk about listening to ourselves. And I think if I could draw an analogy here, perhaps the analogy would be this, that when I'm listening to myself, if my ego mind hears something that it doesn't like, then it may come up with its own rebuttal, its own argument, its own reasons for, unaccepting whatever it was it hears. And this is a kind of an analogous situation. Now, the problem is the heart isn't going to argue with the ego mind. It's just not going to waste its time. And the thing that we have to do is we have to step back and just kind of observe. And if we can observe, and that is let our observer simply watch what's going on with no agenda, with no judgment, with no interpretation, then we can see the ego mind doing its thing. And we can see the heart trying to do its thing. We can see both of those things happening. And we can just say, all right, this is not going to work if you're not going to be able to hear yourself. So take a breath. Take a breath. Maybe take another breath. And let the mind cool down. Let the mind quiet down. And then hear what the heart has to say. This is what I think is really important. And one of the things that we talked about, and I think we probably like to move into this area now, is the heart knows, the soul, the heart, whatever part, knows the truth of who you are. The ego mind has its own story. And so when you listen to the heart, you can become more aware of who you really are and not so much who you think you are. What do you have to say about that?
Firstly, conversations with others can guide us, and when we start listening, can help us to then have a conversation with ourselves. And the conversations with ourselves can be more empowering with the conversations we have with others. There's an element of me that thinks they are totally interlinked. One supports the other and vice versa.
Right.
In respect of ego mind, this is something I do now on a daily basis. And I've got to try and remember the words now. I can't, and I do it every morning. And it's about being grateful for the love in my heart and for my ego mind, and that they work together. To me, our ego mind's role is to protect us. And I think we've touched on this before in previous things we've talked about. Its role is to protect us. And we've never ever changed its role. We've never said to it, great, brilliant, thank you very much indeed for all the protection you gave me when I was younger. However, I happen to be an adult now. I have learnt an awful lot. Can I change your role, please? You still have that element of protection, but can you actually help me live my life to the fullest? Keeping me protected, but letting me experience life. Which then allows us to go into the hurt aspects and start listening to ourselves and hearing ourselves. Because while the mind and the ego is trying to protect us, it doesn't want us doing that because it's going to hurt us. Going out and experiencing life. You know, the fear of not being heard, the fear of not being listened to, the fear of whatever, the fear of going out there in the world when you felt so many years of rejection, unwanted, unloved, not good enough. Because you felt that, the ego, the mind, has kept you in yourself, but not in yourself, in a so-called comfort zone which sits just outside of you. And it's scared stiff of you going inwards. But actually, while it doesn't let you go in and start hearing yourself, the only one that's hurting you is yourself. And it's getting to that understanding of that connection with heart, mind, ego, whatever you want to call any of it. It's helping to bring that connection into play so that we can go in and hear ourselves with no hurt, no pain, just an acceptance that that's what's happened. I can't do anything about it in my past, but what I can do is I can listen and hear. And that is why people like yourself and myself and all the guests you have and the guests I have, we're doing what we're doing. Our own healing journey is what we share because we have heard and listened and worked with ourselves to support ourselves in our growth, in our experiences. We are slowly but surely, sometimes we need a real kick up the backside to make us listen to ourselves, to hear ourselves. But other times, you know, it might feel quite tough at the moment it happens, but other times actually we get it quite quickly because of all the work that we've done and by helping that connection between ego, mind, and heart.
Right. I love what you were saying about gratitude. I think that it's so easy for us to complain about what life is like and all the things that are wrong and everything. And if I think about just like a customer service department, for example, in any business, how often does the customer service department get a call from someone who says, "I love your product. Everything you guys are doing is fantastic"? How often do they get that kind of call? Not very often. And that's because when we're when we're content, we don't generally say too much about it. It's not until we're uncontent, that something is going wrong, that we raise the alarm. That's kind of a natural human tendency, and it's related to the ego mind. It's related to this whole notion of the ego mind trying to protect us and all the rest of it. So I agree with you that it's time for us, all of us, to pause and say to our ego mind, "Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for helping me to navigate safely through this physical world. Thank you so much for protecting me all those many, many times over the course of my childhood. And as you say, I'm an adult now. I now have adult skills that I didn't have when I was a kid. I have the abilities now that I didn't have when I was a child. And so I can protect myself. And so what I want from you is I want you to take a role as a co-pilot in my life. I don't want you to be the captain of the ship anymore. I want my soul to be the captain of the ship. and you're going to be the co-pilot. You're going to help. And we can do that. So what we end up doing in that way is we take our ego minds and we stop letting it run the show, but we keep it around because it's got some great skills that it can use to help us navigate through this physical world. But in the process of all of this, I think we need to remember that we're not who we think we are. We're not who the ego mind thinks we are. We're not our name. We're not the roles we play. We're not the feelings that we have. We're not the thoughts that we have. Those are just things that we create as a result of who we are. And who we are is an amazing, magnificent, divine, spiritual being of light and love, sharing a human experience with all these other amazing beings. That's who you are. And if you take the moment or time to quiet that ego mind, take control of it, and then get back down into your heart, you will become clearer and clearer moment by moment about who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. The wording that I use, and I do expand on it, but the wording I use every morning, thank you for the love in my heart and for a mind and an ego that works with my heart.
Nice. Yeah. And I noticed a couple of things about your statement. First of all, it's spoken in the present tense. It's happening right now. You're not thinking about tomorrow, how you might get that gratitude, but you got this gratitude right now. And you're also suggesting that the ego mind and the heart work together, are already working together right now. That is the nature of what I call attractive thinking. You state it as if it's true right now and just trust that it's true. And the more you practice that, the more it becomes true. And it manifests in the world in amazing ways. It's beautiful. One of the questions that I had about our topic was this whole thing about how do we get sucked into what others think about us? You know, how much of our time and energy is spent trying to get the approval of other people? And maybe what we're in some ways trying to do is get the approval of our own ego minds. Does that resonate for you?
Oh, I spent 40 odd years worrying about what other people thought about me and being an absolute people pleaser because of my own insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard people say, I know who I am and I like who I am, and I was thinking, how the heck can you do that? Because I have no idea who I am.
Right.
And it just didn't make any sense. But obviously, so much. One of the earliest enlightenments for me was, why am I worrying about what other people think of me? Because the truth of the matter is, the majority of the time, they are not even thinking about me. They're thinking about what's going on in their own lives, worrying about what's going on in their own lives. They haven't got time to be thinking about me. So
and let me add to that. They may be worried about what you think about them.
Oh, exactly. When I do the talks that I do, and they are experiential talks, so people can actually experience, and I encourage people to get involved with the sound, with the toning. And I say to people, please do not worry about what the person next to you is thinking about what you are doing, because they're spending their time worrying about what you're thinking about them, and they're actually wanting to concentrate on what they're doing for themselves anyway. So none of you are thinking about anybody else but yourself and what's going to come from you. So don't worry about it. Just do it. Because people aren't. You walk down the street, and are we so in our ego that we think everybody is paying attention to us? It's not happening. And quite a few years ago now, I knew somebody who was like 6 foot something tall, 3 foot wide. He was huge. And this is when I was still working in offices, and I was out during my lunch break, and I beetled down through the town. I wanted to get some exercise, whatever. And suddenly he comes running up to me and said, "You've just walked past me and totally ignored me." I said, "I didn't see you."
And he said,
I can't remember where it went from then. It was just like, "I'm really sorry. I didn't see you," because I was focused. Whatever. When you're in an hour's lunch break and you've got to be back, and if you've got something to do, and I can't remember the whole thing around it, but I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
This is just what it is like out there. If I didn't see this guy that was 6 foot something tall, 3 foot wide, and somebody I knew, am I really looking at anybody else? And if people are as focused as I was, are they seeing me? We see sufficient so we don't bump into each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So who's thinking about us to be judging us?
Right.
They aren't.
You're absolutely right. It's just it's the ego mind saying, because of the fact that we had these wounds as children, well, if that happened then it's going to keep happening over and over and over again, and it means everybody is dangerous to us. That's the story that the ego mind makes up. And so we really, even though we talked about this idea of bringing gratitude in for the ego mind and for what it does do, and for creating this connection between the heart and the mind, we still have to remember that no matter how much work I do, my ego mind is still active. It hasn't gone away. And I don't believe that it ever will go away. But what I can do, what I can choose to do, is I can choose to keep taming my ego mind. Keep loving it, treating it like a little child, and saying, "Look, I understand that you're upset or nervous or whatever, and I love you, and you're great, and you're wonderful. I got this. Because I am a divine, magnificent, spiritual being of light and love. I got it." So, and you're right, Sarah Jane. There's just nobody out there is really judging us. And if they are, they're usually telling us about it.
And if they're judging us, it's probably because of something that's going on in their lives that has absolutely nothing to do with us.
Yep.
We should stay out of judgment, and I do my best. I'm a human being. I'm having this human experience, but judging people, I do my best to stay out of that. And I have to, because when you're working with people who've been abused, staying out of judgment, I do not condone any form of abuse. I really don't. But I have to stay out of the judgment of what the individual has gone through and what other people have done to them. Because if I go into judgment, it doesn't help the individual I'm working with.
Right.
So if I could give proof to the police about any sort of abuse, illegal, whatever, I would have absolutely no hesitation in doing it. I really wouldn't, because I do not condone behaviors that harm and are illegal, etc., etc., etc. I will not condone those things. I really won't. And by keeping quiet, you're condoning. Obviously, with the people I'm working with, I'm just listening to the story they've told. They have to do whatever they feel is right for them. But I'm there to help them to heal their inner child.
Right.
So they can have a more fulfilled life. They can start to take that control back from their ego mind and retrain their ego mind into a more fulfilling, happy, joyful life. And that's what it's about. We are meant to be here to enjoy this experience. And we have tough bits. But would I change any of my tough bits? No, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be where I am now, doing what I'm doing, feeling fulfilled, if I hadn't had the tough bits.
Absolutely. The tough bits. Sounds like a topic for another day. Well, Sarah Jane, as always, it's been a real delight and an honor to have you here and to share this topic with me. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close it out?
I think really it's just trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Believe in yourself. Allow yourself to, it is about awareness, being aware of you. And if something makes you feel uncomfortable, let yourself listen to it, hear it, feel it. Delve into it. Because that way we can do so much more for ourselves. And give yourself a big hug and a cuddle. They're very healing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. And I really like the idea of closing out with a self-hug. That's beautiful. I think, we can do that. We have the power to love ourselves. We have the power to forgive ourselves. We have the power to bring compassion and joy and gratitude into our lives. Anyway, I want to thank you all for participating in today's program. I'd like to remind you that you can watch recordings of this and all other previous shows on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. And my friends, as you go through your week, I'd like you to remember the Life Mastery mantra. Gratefully forgive the imperfect being you have been in the past. Gratefully accept the magnificent being that you are right now. And gratefully welcome the evolved being you are becoming in each new moment. Until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. See you next time.
Thank you. Namaste.